Thank you so much for being here. You know, oftentimes we do not have control of what interferes with our plans. So it is with the United States Postal System. The Vail Voice was not to be delivered until Saturday, but it arrived yesterday. And this let the cat out of the bag a little bit. So if you've read your Vail Voice, you might see a little bit of what we're going to talk about tonight. Fortunately, not everything is in the Vail Voice, so it's a good thing that you're here tonight. We apologize that came out before tonight, and we apologize for any inconvenience, but it was totally 100% out of our control. But we are going to go ahead with our presentation that we have been preparing for months. So, hold on just a second. Hold on. I'm here. Good evening, and thank you for joining us to celebrate a moment in time in the history of our great community of Vail, Arizona. And as we begin, would you please stand and join me in the posting of the colors and remain standing for the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Forward. March. Left. Left. Right. Right. Left. Left. I would like to thank very much our cadets. Oh. They are Ezekiel Corral from Kiara Schwartzman, Joseph Hatfield, Jace Johnson, and Elise Forbes. And thank you very much for being here tonight. We very much appreciate it. And thank you also to Maddie Harris from Cienega High School Senior for singing the Star-Spangled Banner. We also have with us tonight some dignitaries. I tried to catch them as they were walking in, but we do have the Vail Superintendent, the Vail School District Superintendent, John Caruth. Thank you, John, for being here. And we also have Father Alonzo Garcia. Thank you for being here from St. Rita's. And I saw him walk out, and I so much want to recognize him, but he recently retired from the Rincon Valley Fire Department, so I don't know if I can recognize him. But if I were to recognize him, it would be Jamie Colley of the Rincon Valley Fire Department. But I saw, but yes, he's no longer with the Rincon Valley Fire Department, but we still think of him as a dignitary. All right, the complexity of incorporation requires knowledge in a wide range of areas. Legal advice is needed to navigate the Arizona state statutes. Meetings and agreements are needed with affected parties, and technical analysis is required to support the feasibility analysis. And this is what is quite exciting about Incorporate Vail, Arizona. The convergence of talent that we have assembled that somehow has landed here is amazing, and each team member is well suited to their area of leadership. And I continue to be amazed at the talent that has been assembled to address the question of incorporation. Each of these individuals brings a depth of experience and competence to the table. They understand the issues, and they are well qualified to address them. And that is the group that has come together this time, and it is very much appreciated. And I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our board. Our vice president is Mariko Tippett. Our treasurer is Pam Kelty, and Elaine Schmerbeck serves as the treasurer. And yeah, you can, well, hold off and then we'll clap at the end. Directors are Peter Backus, Linda Broadwater, Nancy Campman-Crofts, Ann Gibson, Greg Kempe, Jerry Jean Lamb, Allison Pratt, Rob Samuelson, and Brad Anderson serves as an advisor to the board. So if you are on a board, would you please just rise and we'll thank you so much. Serving on the committee for tonight's town hall is Ann Gibson from Del Webb, Mary Johnson from the Academy Village, Greg Kempe from Antler Crest, David Stitt from Del Webb, and Joy Tucker from Rocking K Estates. Let's give them a thanks. We are all volunteers here donating our time for the purpose of uniting Vail, and we are so grateful for that. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our Vice President, Mr. Mariko Tippett.
Thank you. All right. So, as I always say, good evening, neighbors. So, my name is Mariko Tippett, and I've lived here in Vail since 2001. And when I think about Vail and what it has meant for me and my family, my wife and I have raised 3 kids here, and I think about the future of my children, the future of my grandchildren, and when I envision that, I have a vision of them being in a town called Vail. And believe it or not, there are statutes or requirements that we must meet in order for us to be a legitimate town of Vail. And I'm going to go over what those are. So, under the Arizona statute requirements, we have to meet a population minimum requirement. We must be urban in nature, and we must have a sense of community. And the proposed town or city of Vail meets all of these requirements. So for the population requirements, the state, it states that the area considered qualifying to be incorporated must have at least 500 residents and within 10 miles of a national park, or at least 1,500 residents for a town and at least 3,000 residents for a city. The area that we are considering has approximately 21,000 residents according to the latest United States Census, and therefore exceeds all the population minimums. So that first one is a check. So what is required to be urban in nature? The statute describes it as, it shall not include large areas of uninhabited rural or farmlands, but shall be urban in nature. There is no part of Vail that is more than 9 miles from the city of Tucson. The western boundary borders the city of Tucson, and the only significant parcel of empty land is adjacent to the city of Tucson. Therefore, the proposed town or city of Vail meets the definition of urban in nature. So that's the second one. Check. The third and the last statute requirement is a sense of community, and this is the one that I really get excited about. Seeing how we have grown and come together as a community over the last 20 years for myself. The description of such is a locality in which a body of people reside having common interests which bind the people of the area and where the people are acquainted and mingle in business, social, educational, and recreational activities. So under Vail organizations, we list the Vail Unified School District, the Greater Vail Area Chamber of Commerce, the Vail Preservation Society, the Rincon Valley Fire Department, the Resources Vail Food Bank, the Vail Depot Thrift Store, the Vail Water Company, the Vail Voice newspaper, the Vail Corral, and many more. For events, we list things such as Vail Pride Day, Vail Fest, Saturdays Between the Tracks, Prickly Pear Jamboree, 'Tis the Season, Voices of Vail, Empire Ranch Days, groups picking up trash, singing in the season concert, and many more. And last but not least, under the historical sites, we listed St. Rita's Catholic Church, the Vail Post Office, Colossal Cave Mountain Park, Vail's Children's Cemetery, Section Foreman House, U.S. Route 80, Leon Ranch Cemetery, the Mormon Battalion Trail, Native American sites, and many more. I really didn't know we had this much as a community, but it really goes to show that Vail is special. So there is no doubt that Vail has a strong sense of community. With Incorporation, it will only get stronger. And now I will introduce Rob Samuelson.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I was commissioned to head up the Technical Advisory Committee. So we put together a good committee to help us out. These are all experts in their respective fields. Some of them are here today. I'm going to go through, but if you'll stand up quickly or raise your hand, just raise your hand when I call out your name. Myself, I was a chief financial officer for many years. I've been a CEO of 3 companies, and I've worked in 3 Fortune 500 companies. So I have a lot of experience in analysis, and so I was tasked to lead this group. We have Greg Campy, who is our engineer, Pam Kelty, who is a CPA, J.J. Lamb, who represented us in history, preservation, and parks and rec, Jonathan Lowndes, but Jonathan's an attorney, but he didn't represent us as an attorney. He represented us to search out what a magistrate court would look like for the town of Vail. Brad Anderson, who is the president of Chamber of Commerce, talking about economic development. Joe Galato, retired and still working assistant fire chief for the city of Tucson. Travis Leduc, who is a government administrator with Native peoples. And Barry Harriman, who's a retired police officer. And besides this group, we also engaged other experts in the respective fields. We had all of our financials reviewed by a municipal finance expert. We had other police officers and executives in the police public safety realm look at some of the proposals that we got and some of the information that we have. So we put together a very good team, a very expert team. We spent the last 4 months gathering data, putting together a financial analysis, and that's what I'm going to show you next. A couple things quickly. We are doing 2 years. The first year is not a full year, and the second year is really what we want to focus on because that's the sustainability part, and we'll show you both of those. And then at the end, I'll show you the current boundaries that we're working with right now. A couple things that don't change. The school district doesn't change. The fire districts don't change. The post office districts don't change. Improvement districts, such as the Rocking K Community Facilities District, CFD, that does not change. Conservation areas don't change with Incorporation. Those are intact. Those are separate legal entities, and they remain as they are. I mentioned to you the first year is not a full 12 months. This is sort of the state of Arizona's opportunity to be a venture capitalist, because what they allow us to do is start collecting state shared revenues, but they require the county to continue to provide services. So we get revenue for free with no expenses for that first, up to the end of the first fiscal year. If we go to vote in August, we get 11 months of free money. And if we go in November, we get 7 months. And so you'll see how those numbers look. Our committee has no authority to commit the new town council So we make some assumptions, but we basically take things at face value. We don't try to negotiate. We don't criticize saying, hey, this is wrong, this is right. We take things at face value. We review them to make sure they're accurate to the best information that we have, and then we proceed with that. We have a white paper that we are almost done with, and it goes into a lot of detail. That'll be up on our website once we finish it up, and that'll give you all the source documents and how we derive the numbers that we do. And then all of our data has been third-party independently reviewed by experts. So very quickly, the revenue in year 2, I'd like you to focus on year 2, is $14.2 million. That represents a full 12 months of state shared revenues, county revenue, and potential new revenue that would happen here in Vail. So just as a highlight, if you really want to think about it, when I hear you're going to raise my taxes, that would be in that 4% line, okay? And I'm going to go through each detail so you can see that, but I know that's a question in a lot of people's mind. The other piece I'd like to mention, particularly on the state shared revenues, these are taxes that we already pay, and we got no benefit from it all here in Vail today. So that $9.9 million, most of it stays in Maricopa County because it's allocated to cities and towns. And if you're not a city or a town, you get 0. And that's where we are today. The county revenue is a little different because we get services for that too, so it's not quite the same as state shared revenue. Okay, so if we look at the state shared revenue, it comes into 4 pieces. First of all, we have state sales tax that we all pay, 5.6%. Every time we buy something goes to the state. Part of that money is allocated to come back to cities and towns. For us, in that second year, it would be $2.9 million. State income tax, when we pay our taxes every year, some of that money also comes back to cities and towns. In this case, it doesn't come the first year. It only comes the second year. And that's almost $4 million. Vehicle license tax, every time we register our cars, we pay a tax. And that comes back to us as a city and town also. And then the highway users, which is the gas tax, 18% of every gallon that you buy goes into a fund, and we get a portion of that back to fund transportation. And so all in all, the state shared revenues comes out about $9.9 million. If we look at the county tax, so I said Pima County revenue, the first part is a half-cent sales tax by the RTA. That's the Regional Transportation Authority. They have 51 line items that are by ballot that are being done in our county right now. The most obvious part of the RTA that all of us know are all the improvements on Houghton Road, all the way from I-10 all the way north to Tinca Verde Road. So that 3-lane expansion was funded with RTA dollars. Cities and towns get to have the opportunity to join and be a member of the RTA, and they get a voice at the table. The state law also says that every city and town in an RTA in Arizona gets $300,000 a year or 1% of revenues, tax revenues, whichever is greater. So that's about $1 million, slightly more than $1 million of RTA dollars. Now that money is restricted. There's really only 7 categories of the 51 that we'd be eligible for at this late in the game. But what's really more important, honestly, is that they're working on RTA 2 that will replace this in 2026. And right now, we don't have anybody sitting at the table representing Vail, because Vail is a non-entity, except for Pima County. They sit at the table representing us. The second piece is development impact fees. These are impact fees that every time you build a house, you pay $7,671, and that goes into an impact fee area. The best example of that impact fee area that we have here in Vail is the expansion of Colossal Cave Road there in front of the Dairy Queen. That was paid for with development impact fees. The third part is fines and fees. And that's, when you go too fast on Old Spanish Trail or Marianne Cleveland. Nobody's ever done that, I'm sure. But I happen to be a contributor to that line item. No confession. And then development services. This is for builders or remodelers and they have to buy permits. So when you build a new house, that by the time you build that house, you paid well over $20,000 between the impact fees and all the other permit fees and inspection fees that you pay, and that goes into the development services. All in all, that's about $3.675 million that it would, instead of going to Pima County, would come to us. But we'd have to also provide those services. And the RTA is on a reimbursement basis, just it's not free money. We do the project, we pay for it, and then we get the money back. Finally, if we look at the local revenue, every city and town has the option of implementing a sales tax. If we look at in Pima County, Saurita or Vail Marana, which would be our co-parts, so to speak, locally, all of them have a sales tax that they've implemented. Right now, we don't have a lot of retail, but as a result of the Wayfair versus South Dakota Supreme Court decision, that every time you buy something over the internet and have it delivered to your house becomes the store and you pay sales tax then. And if we had a Vail sales tax, that would be on that through the Wayfair decision. Property tax, we did not put property tax in. That's, I think, the one that most people are nervous about. And Saurita or Vail Marana do not have a sales tax or a property tax, nor do many other smaller cities and towns in Arizona. If we're annexed into the city of Tucson, our property taxes will go up because they do have a property tax. The utility franchise tax, this is paid by utility companies, and what it grants them is access to our roads so that they can maintain their physical plant or their infrastructure. They bring their heavy trucks on the municipality's roads so that they can change out the wiring, telephone poles, sewer lines, et cetera, et cetera. According to the League of Cities and Towns, generally what happens there is the utilities actually come to the municipality because they like to know that they're protected, and they get that protection by paying this fee to the city or town. And finally, business licenses, that's if you start a new business, you buy a business license for $35 or whatever the fee is. And we put in an estimate of $10,000, not big, but something like that. So all in all, that's the $14.2 million of revenue that would come to us. Remember, 96% of that is stuff that we already pay, and 70% of that we get no benefit from today. If we look at the expense size, we broke them into three categories: staffing, contracted services, and other expenses. Very quickly, the mayor and council, that is appointed, that first mayor and council is appointed by the Board of Supervisors. And then when the next election cycle, then you would vote for your mayor and town council. They are volunteers. They will probably be volunteers for several decades before they start getting a small stipend. Even the mayor of Tucson only makes like $40,000, so it's not a lot. But for the smaller communities, it's all volunteer basis. And if you look at Saurita and those other towns, they don't pay their mayor or councils. We do put a little bit of money in there. That's for reimbursements, travel. They're going up to conferences or going down to Pima Association of Governments or something like that to get reimbursed. So we have a little bit of money there. And then we put in professional staff of about 6 employees. That's a town manager. That is a finance director, a development services manager or director, and a couple other staff members to help out. Clerk, town clerk, and then a couple of other people there. So 6 employees. So the total staffing is about $454,000. If you look at contracted services, by state law, we have to provide sheriff, we have to provide these services, but it doesn't say we have to do it ourselves. It says that we can contract with others to do that service. We got a quote from Pima County, and I should tell you that Pima County has been quite cooperative with us and easy to work with, and we really appreciate that. Their proposal is 23 officers. That's more than double what we have today. That's a fully loaded cost. That includes helicopters, SWAT teams, you name it. It's got everything in there. It's a complete service that they would provide for $3.8 million. This is a very common practice to contract with a county or another municipality to provide police. The town of Patagonia has had a marshal for many years. They recently contracted with Santa Cruz County to provide that public safety in the town of Patagonia, which is just south of this. The Transportation Department, that $3.6 million. Right now, Pima County last year spent $1.7 million out here. So this is more than double what we currently get in terms of roads out here in Vail. And it would come from those three sources, RTA, but remember that's restricted, HERF, which is also restricted, and impact fees, development impact fees, DIFO. And those are also restricted, so all those, we put all those into transportation. And just for example, if we were not able to join the RTA, that expense would go down, so it has a net effect of 0. Development services, again, that's do the permitting and inspections for remodeling and new construction. We have $1 million in legal and courts. That's in two pieces. One is magistrate court and one is jail. The jail would still be provided by Pima County. We had 60 misdemeanors last year in Vail out of 21,000 people, and you pay for that. So that's the $1 million. And then there's a couple other contracted services. We also met just briefly with a former city manager of a town in Florida. It's a town that's twice as big as we are, 3 times actually, about 60,000 people. And they are a contracted city, a completely contracted city. They have 12 employees, I think, today, and they're 3 times our size. So that is a model of governance that is appealing, but that would be up to the new town council to decide how to run the town. And quickly, I'm going to go over to, we may have some election costs. So we put that number in there. That's the number from Pima County. That number could fluctuate whether we do mail-in ballots or whether we have precincts that you go and vote. Precincts are a lot more expensive than a mail-in ballot. Dues and subscription. This is the dues for 2 organizations, the Pima Association of Governments, which we would want to be a member of because they control other monies that could come our way, which we did not include in the revenue model, but we would undoubtedly get some of that because it's project-based, but it's on a competitive basis based on the other cities and towns in Pima County. And then the Arizona League of Cities and Towns, which is the trade group that would represent us for the state legislature. And those two come to about $31,000, almost $32,000. We had a question earlier about insurance. In Arizona, there's something called the Arizona Risk Retention Pool. That is a captive insurance company that only provides insurance to Arizona cities and towns. And the board of directors are some of the mayors. The mayors are the board of directors of that captive insurance company. The $20,000 is an estimate from that risk retention pool. Now, remember, the contractors, like police, they pay insurance for their police because they're a contractor. So we're not paying the insurance for police cars and things like that, okay? But that is an estimate from the insurance pool, so that's an accurate number. And then just office expenses, internet, website, office supplies, staplers, all those types of things. We put $71,000 for a total expense of $11.2 million, which means that we would, based on our model and the analysis that we put together, we would have what's called a fund balance. That's government speak. In the commercial world, that would be profit of 21% or $2.9 million. So that is our analysis. Now, government does one thing that's a little different also. This is a summary of everything we've talked about. But the other thing that they do is you have to do fund accounting. And fund accounting says you have to separate restricted funds from non-restricted funds. That $3.6 million is from the gas tax, from the impact fee money, and the RTA. And this all would be dedicated to transportation. And so then you can see how the numbers break out between restricted and non-restricted funds. We're going to open up for questions later, so I'm going to move right on. The second piece that we were tasked with is looking at what the boundaries might be. And I know this is a topic that all of us are interested in. I can tell you just right up front that it's not done yet. We have a little bit more time, so we're still working on it. And it's a little bit funky. And I know it's a little bit hard to see, but if you look at that dotted blue line, that's what we started with when we started this 4 months ago. We knew that would not be the final map, but we needed a starting point, so we just simply call it our area of interest. If you look at the fire districts, we have 2 fire districts that would serve the town of Vail, which would be the Rincon Valley Fire Department and the Corona de Tucson Fire Department. Those don't change, by the way. They are independent. They have their own boards. It really has nothing to do with the incorporated towns. School district, same thing. It's a lot bigger than the town of Vail, so the school district would continue to serve Rita Ranch and Corona de Tucson and other places that are not the town of Vail. So this is what we're working with right now. I'm going to take you through this really quickly, and then we'll break it into pieces. We also have the maps posted in the back. We tried to blow them up, but the printer said that the resolution was too low, that you wouldn't be able to read it, so you'll just have to go up close, and we'll have proctors at each one of those 3 maps to help you identify your house if you're interested. On the north end, so from this corner in Rincon Valley, it follows the federal land. This weird line is federal land, all the way over to here. Then you hit Rocking K. At the current moment, they have opted out of the incorporation. We follow this line down here. Well, let me take you up here. It goes up to here. Right there where my pointer is Saguaro Buttes Church, to give you perspective. And this is right here is Rocking K Estates. Now you notice that's currently an island, and we can't have an island, and we know that. So we're still working on that. On the west edge, which is all the way from here, all the way down to here, this blue-green color is the city of Tucson boundary. So it just follows the boundary. We got this really weird finger in here. That is the city of Tucson boundary, all the way up like this. That is the mine, the Black Angus mine. We don't want a mine, there might be nasties in there anyway. So if you look on the east side, we start in that corner. We follow National Forest and National Park and wilderness area all the way down to here. And then we cut across some section lines to right here. And then we follow a section line straight south, a little jog over where the Andrada would be if it went through. And then we follow Old Sonoyta Highway, and then straight across Saurita Road, up Wentworth, cut across again what would be Andrada if extended. Oh, that's the southern. I did the southern there. So the western boundary is basically federal land, and then we cut some section lands down through here. And then the southern boundary is this part from here to here, following Saurita Road for part of it, and then Andrada part of it. So that is the current map that we're working with. This is the same thing blown up, so I'm going to go through 7 maps that show the neighborhoods a little bigger so you can kind of figure out where you live. The Saguaro Buttes Church here. You got the Diamond Ventures property that they're developing here. You got the Rocking K Estates. Down here you've got Coyote Creek and Academy Village. Includes the Rincon Valley up through here. We worked with the county on this. The county has agreed and supported this and actually encouraged us to do this. If we carve out pieces, then they have to provide sheriff, and it's really awkward, and they'd rather have it here because we're closer. So it includes Rincon Valley. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing here. I'll catch it in the next slide. Okay. So you got Coyote Creek, Antler Crest, Rincon Trails, and then down into Del Lago. It includes Mountain Creek, both sides of the road. It also includes Colossal Cave Mountain Park. And it's county-owned land or state land. Most of it's conservation land, but they've agreed and encouraged us to include that in the boundary. You've got this long finger up here. This is hot rods, so that would be in the town of Vail. You got some new subdivisions along the tracks on both sides of the tracks. But I want to highlight one thing really quick right here. Esmond Station, that is in the city of Tucson, and this subdivision here is also in the city of Tucson. So you got Rocking K, Cienega High School, that's where we are right now, Safeway, and the Trotter Sisters on the other side of the tracks. Like I said, we include Colossal Cave Mountain Park, the Christ Lutheran Church. I put that on there. That's for David Hook, Pastor Hook. That's his church. That was simply for politics and try to get a good word from above. And then if we go south, again, for perspective, I put Dairy Queen, another place that I frequent way too often. Success Drive, New Dawn Estates, and Sundowner. And right there is the Vail School District office, if you know where that is. And then we have this piece of vacant land here. This is owned by the state. And over here is the city of Tucson, in blue. And then all of New Tucson out to Sahuarita Road. And I put the Rincon Valley Fire Department station there right off the freeway. So with that, I think back to Pastor Hook.
Do I need it?
What? You want that?
Do I have any other slides?
Yeah.
I don't remember my book.
Oh, you want to go. This book.
Can you thank Rob Samuelson and the Technical Advisory Question for all their... They have worked very, very, very hard. And it is amazing the people that he has pulled together to do this. Analysis and vet it and all that sort of thing. And it is the conclusion by the Incorporate Vail Technical Advisory Committee that a new town of Vail is financially feasible and sustainable. And Pam Kelty, CPA and IVA, Incorporate Vail Treasurer, is going to come up and talk about that. So come on up. Could you welcome Pam Kelty? She is a CPA. And she is also on the Technical Advisory Committee, and she has followed along in all the calculations, and so I'm going to hand the mic over to her.
Thank you, David. Our committee met every Monday at 7:30 at night. At my age, 7:30 at night is almost my bedtime. So it was a commitment, but it was a very good committee to be on. And I would like to confirm the due diligence of a very qualified committee members that did the work. The committee took a very conservative approach to compiling the income and expenses for the information for the pro forma financials. And we as a committee are very comfortable and confident in the ability of the town of Vail to be feasibly workable and sustainable. And we're all real excited about it.
Thank you. All right. Well, what everybody has been waiting for all night. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to announce that all 12 members of the board of Incorporate Vail, Arizona, pardon? We would like the board to come up, please. Please stand.
Come on up.
Come on up. What an incredibly good group of people, I tell you that. You guys. All right. This is the Incorporate Vail, Arizona board. It represents a very good cross-section of talent that has invested hours and hours and hours of time into the Vail community and various organizations throughout the years. This group has unanimously voted to proceed into the next phase towards incorporation. Yay! So there's a question mark on Incorporate Vail, Arizona, and that question mark is really, does it make sense to go forward for the next step of incorporation? And we've answered it yes. So we are grateful. So thank you very much for the board. We appreciate it. All right, so we are going to allot some time for the town hall for you to ask your questions. We have runners around with microphones, and I know that they're around here somewhere. If you would like to ask a question, make sure you find a runner. They will bring a microphone over to you. Wait until you get a microphone. Please speak clearly into the microphone. We are here to try to answer as best as we can the questions that you may have. And we are asking that you hold your questions only to one question until we've completed everybody that has a raised hand, and then we will welcome your comments also. Let's see. So if you have a question that you would like to ask, please go ahead and raise your hand, and we will find somebody with a microphone to come and talk to, and we will try to answer it as best as we can. And who are our microphone people? They're in the back. All right. So why don't you go ahead and stand up and hand a microphone to somebody, and go ahead and clearly ask your question. And I'm going to have Rob and Mariko help me answer.
Thank you. My question is, why does Diamond Ventures at Brookston and his group, how come they're allowed to not participate, all the residents in that area and all that money, how come they do not have to participate in this incorporation?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's a good question, and I knew that would come up. We've met with them multiple times. We'll probably meet with them again in the future. You have to remember that they've spent millions of dollars on that development, and they have a lot of agreements with Pima County. They don't know who Vail is. They don't know who the council is going to be. They don't know what the laws are going to be in the town of Vail. So it represents risks to them. They're in favor of incorporation, but they have to protect their own interests because of risk, and I understand that. The other thing is there's a new state statute and state law that gives developers with active developments an opportunity to opt out. And so that's what's going on there.
All right.
Fully expect they'll want to later.
We're going to go right here to the lady in the red. Yes.
What are the next steps that the board has agreed to?
All right, what are the next steps? Well, the next step is to spend the next 6 months refining this boundary, making sure that everybody that's in the boundary wants to be in the boundary. If there's people like Rocky and Kay that don't want to be in the boundary, then they get exited from the boundary. At the end of that 6 months, we publish that boundary, and then we wait another 60 days. And then if that boundary gets approved by Pima County, then it would go to a vote. And it would come up to the residents of Vail. The question mark really isn't for us of Incorporate Vail, Arizona. It's actually all of you who are the residents. You decide whether or not you want to be a town of Vail or not. So that boundary will come to you in about 8 months as a finalized boundary, and then we go to a vote. We'll go into the back. Yes, go ahead.
So, my question has to do with revenue sharing. So, we're not getting the benefit of revenue that we're seeing presented, but we would get the benefit from the town. My question would be, so if we take that money out of the pool, that we haven't been getting the benefit to, which are getting the benefit to, the people that were getting the benefit of our money before are now going to have a gap. Would that not result in a raise in taxes across the county, across those tax bases, or are we so small that it's not going to be negative that we make?
Yeah, so let me repeat that so everybody could hear that. He asked, if we start drawing that from that pool of state shared revenues, what happens to everybody else that's drawing from that same pool? And he's correct, that we now tap into that pool and that everybody else would draw a little bit less. So right now it's $330 per capita, and that would come to us. But once we're in that pool, it might go down to $329 per person. We're teeny compared to Maricopa County, just saying.
So it's minuscule.
So yeah, so it's a minuscule impact, but you're correct, theoretically, you're correct.
The numbers that we saw for us adding to the pool and taking from that state shared revenue was less than 1% for all the other cities and towns.
All right.
Put your mic close to your mouth.
Question is water.
Water.
You probably know more about that than I do.
Yeah, so right now, we have no municipal water out here. Everything is private. It's either on wells or well shares, or Vail Water Company, which is privately owned, or the Saguaro Water Company, which is also privately owned. So there is no municipal water, and that's where we stand today. That would continue.
You're probably also concerned about, as people move into this area, is there enough water for sustainability? And that is a question that goes to the state of Arizona, and they evaluate all the water, and they make the water shares and the agreements with the Central Arizona Project Canal. They are tasked with making sure that there's enough water for a 50 or 100-year supply. All of that stuff stays the same, except that now Vail would have a voice at the table to make our voice heard about water issues that we might have in the Vail area. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I live in the old line, my name is Drew Palmer. So risk management, so what concerns me on your insurance costs and such, the county pays out millions and millions of dollars a year. Individuals, settlements, who pay huge insurance costs. If a sheriff has an incident here, outside his door, we have $1 million lawsuit, do we pay that now? Because now we're in it. With risk management, the county would pay that, that happened in Vail. And so when you start reflecting those numbers, and when you become an entity, and the big counties, everybody's facing that, and huge expenses in risk management, cybersecurity, there's even drone issues, because we can get sued over drone issues and such, now that we're all incorporated. So you start having those things on, because I know that, I'm on that board, so I see them pay out. And that concerns me, because now we're an entity, we can be sued.
So contractors would have their own insurance. So if it's malfeasance on one of their employees, they're going to have to cover that insurance. The municipal risk retention pool is a captive insurance company that insures municipalities against risk. And that's how we're protected. That is an estimate from them. That includes D&O, that includes general liability. We got an estimate from them. I've talked to them personally. So that's the number that they gave us. And that's the number that other jurisdictions that have become incorporated, that's about where they were when they started. If we start to buy police cars and if we start to buy tractors to build roads, our insurance costs are going to go up.
A lot of those, and if once you become an organization, what happens is you pay those out of pocket. Because of your premiums, just like you would if you ran into me, it's $500, you're going to write me a check, you're not going to claim that. Well, but now it's millions of dollars. You'd be surprised the checks the county writes. That we settle cases all the time, and that's a liability for that, or your insurance goes like this, it's crazy. You should see the exponential cost, even when we self-insure as a county.
I'm well aware of that. I was CFO for 14 years for the Regional Transportation Authority, and we had lawsuits coming in all the time. So I worked with the pool. I've met with them in person on other issues, and I can tell you that this is how the cities and towns insure themselves in the state of Arizona.
Thank you for that question, though, that comment. All right, we're going to go back over here. Go ahead.
My name is Bob Foy, and I live in Corona. Corona is trying to become their own independent city, and I'm against that. We have to pull together, and we have to be part of Vail. And that's our only to be a part of Vail. What can I do to help?
So that is a very good question. So we sat down and we met with the people that are starting the incorporation effort at Corona. And currently they do not want to be a part of the Vail incorporation effort. They are wanting to continue on with their own effort. The time frame for that will probably be 12 months to a year out. And There is the possibility that once we vote to say, yes, we want to be a town, that Corona could then say, how about we annex into the town of Vail? So right now, there really isn't anything that we can do at this moment to include Corona, but at a later date, it's not to say that we can't.
I'd also like to point out that when we met with them, we agreed upon the boundary that you see as to what would be the town of Vail, what would be Corona. If we do not become a town of Vail, if the town decides they don't want to become the town of Vail, then I think Corona would actually want to go all the way up to I-10 and take the I-10 Wentworth interchange, and whatever businesses are built there, that they would take that tax revenue. They were very, very much interested in moving a whole lot farther north than we held them to. The other thing is that there is a agreement with the people, the residents of Corona de Tucson, that when they put in the sewer line, the water line, that the city of Tucson would have the opportunity to incorporate that community annex that community into the town of Tucson. I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think Tucson wants that. And I don't think Corona de Tucson wants to be a part of Tucson. But that lingering issue is a very difficult legal thing to unravel, and we don't want that issue to slow down our incorporation efforts. So that's also something to think about. All right, we're over there. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Frances Vail. I live in Vail. My concern is the population of Vail and the traffic that we have. Once we incorporate, who will maintain the roads? Will there be stoplights put in and everything like that? Because it takes literally, sometimes if you're leaving when the kids are in school, an hour just to get out of Vail.
Yeah.
Development.
So, as a former traffic engineer, let me answer that question. Vail has huge traffic problems. A group of us went to Pima County, the traffic engineering department, and started to work on some solutions, but Pima County has no money. The money that we pay in taxes for gas tax goes to Pima County, and then Pima County spends it wherever they want to, and I'll tell you where they're not spending it is here in Vail. As a matter of fact, Colossal Cave Road was built with it was improved with that, the fees, the house fees, the impact fees. It should have probably been already paid for by the taxes that we pay on our gas. Honestly, we pay a lot of money in taxes that goes to Pima County, and they don't come back and spend a lot of money here. And as you can see, there was a huge pile of money with RTA and HERF that would now come into the town of Vail, and the town of Vail would gather together and say, okay, where are our problems and where do we need help? And we would solve them and fix them, because if we wait for Pima County, it's probably going to take a long time. Thank you so much for that question. Yes, go ahead.
I'm Stuart Capps from Mayview. I have a question about the boundaries. Will there be a discussion with the city of Tucson to develop their boundary right across Colossal Cave and just retract it back to the west? Just real quick, are the fairgrounds in or out?
Well, fairgrounds are out. That's sort of different because they have their own group, they have their own board for that. As far as de-annexing that finger that cuts across Colossal Cave, we're in no position to negotiate. The day that, if we incorporate, that day, our organization goes away and there's a new organization managed by the town council. They would have to negotiate that. So we're in no position to commit one way or the other.
All right, go ahead. Yes.
Medical marijuana grow on 4 acres in our neighborhood. And leave. And my issue isn't about them growing, it's legal, Arizona has made it legal. My issue is, I don't want them growing in my neighborhood. In my neighborhood, we might be 4 acres apart, and we might have a couple of horses. We also have an area that will be probably abused because people will start coming out to fight us and do these kinds of things. So my question would be down the road, how is something like this going to be addressed and how are we going to protect it? Because like I said, we're all, a lot of us are rural residential. We have well water. And out where I am, 85,000 gallons of water to the neighbors on a daily basis is a lot of water.
So,
It would produce water issues. Because, you know, like you said earlier, a lot of this area that you are talking about is on wells, private wells, Vail Water Company, and what they have out in front. And I just hope that this topic that we put on somewhere on a list, on a discussion, or anything, just to protect everyone, because it's happening in the county. We fought it, 3 months we fought it, big time.
so thank you so much for your question, and it sounds like what you're asking is, would we as a town of Vail monitor the water that comes out to grow marijuana plants, and would we have control over that? And if we were a town of Vail, we would have our own control over what happens with every piece of property within our community, and we're local, so we understand it. I sit on the Pima County Planning and Zoning Commission. Actually, I'm the Pima County Planning and Zoning Commissioner Chair. And these things happen. This is a law that is allowed in Pima County, and they're asking about places that I have never been to. And I'm making decisions for places that I have no idea about. And so I'm excited for the opportunity for Vail to have their own control on that.
Actually, my question really is not so much about the water, but about after incorporation, will the town of Vail be able to protect us over the county as they go in and change our zoning to allow people to come in and grow marijuana in their neighborhoods? You'd be surprised at the number of people who are growing in their house, right in their own neighborhood.
Yeah, so let me address this. This is, I mentioned it earlier, that we don't have any control of what the new town council would choose. But the number one issue of incorporation isn't taxes, it's not all this other stuff. It's having control of our own destiny. We would decide what we want for Vail and what we don't want for Vail. And let me just say that I grow a lot of weed too, and I get nasty grams from my HOA all the time.
You might want to clarify that just a little bit, Rob.
Desert broom.
Desert broom, okay, all right. Where's the next question? Right over here, yes.
Zoning development would remain under the town guidelines, or would we need to envision having some of our own?
So the question is what happens with zoning. For those of you that may not know, zoning is a right on a piece of property to build it according to the zoning code. And right now, everything that you see is controlled by Pima County zoning code. Once we become a town of Vail, we pull together as a community and we develop our own zoning map, our own zoning rules, our own strategic plan for zoning. And yes, that stays then local to here, and we decide what we want as a town. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, very good question.
Would we, excuse me, but whatever we enacted would have to comply with what the requires?
So initially, we would follow the county zoning because that's what's there. It's kind of grandfathered in. But as we move forward, we can set up our own rules and regulations
And we have to.
by law.
Sarah Peterson, Rincon Valley. My question, can you talk about the Rocky Cay area? Would it be smart for us to wait until after some of the development? And we're talking like 3,600 houses that we would get revenue from, in addition to if we
Well, we could put it off. They've put it off for more than 30 years already. So, how long do we want to wait? Yes, they're actively building in it, and it really becomes a question of, at some point, Diamond Ventures isn't there anymore, and then they don't have any control anymore, and that'll be up to citizens to do something at that point.
So we haven't found that there was a financial benefit or like huge amount of revenue. There's not a ton of businesses that.
Tell them that we don't have those numbers in because it was in the 2020 census.
In the future, that whole side of the Spanish Trail is going to be businesses, hotel lighting heard, that kind of stuff.
Well, so we don't have the full numbers in yet because the 2020 census hasn't really kind of fully been activated. But I will tell you this, if it's believed that every house pays $25,000 to Pima County, and there's 10,000 houses that are going to go into Rocking K, that's $250,000 of revenue that is going to Pima County. And it would be great if Rocking K could be a part of the town of Vail, because then we could receive those revenues. But it is completely up to them, and we honor and respect whatever it is that they want to do. So you are 100% correct that there is revenue that's being left on the table, but we can't really wait because there's other revenue sources, there's other things happening in the town of Vail that if we don't incorporate, we have no voice as to what happens anywhere. Even though we're part of Pima County doesn't always come out here and ask us for our opinions. So that's.
And how will you close that gap, the islands that you're talking about, if they
Well, we've thought about hiring Guido. No, there's a sliver of land. There's about 2,600 feet that we're trying to see if we can negotiate to close that bridge. If we can connect that 2,600 feet, then we may be able to include Rocking K Estates now rather than later.
All right, where are we with questions? Over here, yes.
Question about the island issue or the property boundaries of Rocking K. My understanding is that Rocking K originally was part of Academy Village, but that was the very first development of Rocking K. So is Academy Village still part of that Rocking K piece of property? And if Rocking K has opted out of the Vail Incorporation, doesn't that mean that Academy Village will be sitting in the little island problem? Or will we not be that a little island that would be a part of Vail Incorporated?
So there's two parts to our proposed map. One is the big main park that's south of Old Spanish Trail, and there's this little tiny thing of Old Rocking K Estates, and we're trying to connect those. But Academy Village is included in the big, large part, and Rocking K does no longer own Academy Village. It's owned by independent people, so they have no control over Academy Village as far as Rocking K goes. But I know you have your own board, and you have your own things, and that remains. But the boundary that we have currently come up with that the feasibility study is based on includes Academy Village in the town of Vail. Yes. Wait, we're over here. Yes.
These guys have been up front. Hey,
you had mentioned that the first town council will be appointed by Pima County. What is the process for the formal town council after that?
So the first county mayor, or the first town mayor and council is appointed by Pima County Board of Supervisors. And then in May of the following year, there is an election, and then the town of Vail elects who the new mayor and town council is. Yeah.
Carl Saga, Albert, clearly a couple concerns, and I think benefits to incorporating some risks. Can you share with us kind of, give or take, 3, 5, like what are the top 5 benefits? What are the top 3 or 5 risks that you see, like, so we can kind of conglomerate? I know that there's some ease to it, but I also know that the government becomes
I'm going to turn that over to Mariko.
Okay, so as far as so essentially you're asking about the pros and cons.
Right.
So the pros, the pros are, as we said, one, we're already paying taxes that we're not benefiting from, so the state share revenue, so that's one con. Two is, I call it, we become legitimate. We get to control and have a say directly for our local area, what we want to see, how we want to grow, and how we want to identify as a community. And further, we get, I believe we'll have better protection as far as police. As the estimate showed with the $3.8 million, that's 23 sheriffs, which is twice what we currently have right now. Response times will be greater. As far as the cons, you could say there's another layer of government because we will still be a part of Pima County. We will have to go through the growing pains of organizing a new town and a new city, and what that looks like. We would have to, again, come together as a group of people and decide what we want our charter to look like. There are still things that we don't know. We have done our best to come up with a thoughtful process that we have gone through, but as the guy was saying, you know, there are risks. There are things that we don't know. As any new town, there will be growing pains, and we will utilize the resources that are available to us to handle those as they come. Does that answer your question?
Can you talk about RTA, just one example?
Yeah, so you asked me to talk about RTA, but I want to talk about the Pima Association of Governments as well. So the Pima Association of Governments is governed by all the mayors of Pima County, 2 representatives from the tribal entities, a member of the Board of Supervisors from Pima County, and a member of ADOT. And they control a lot of money, other monies that are not in our model, that also would come our way if we had a voice, a seat at the table. We would become a member of PAG. We would have a seat at the table if we're incorporated. Right now, we're represented only through a representative from the Pima County, which is the 4th largest county in the United States. And our representative, Steve Christie, he covers all the way from Mount Lemmon all the way to Green Valley. So we're a small piece of his district, and he does his best, but that's the representation we get. Having our own city and town, we have 100% representation. Our mayor is going to be one of our neighbors. Our town council is going to be one of our neighbors. You might become the next mayor. And so we have control of our own destiny. That's really ultimately the thing, is incorporating, you have control of your own destiny. And it's your neighbors and your friends that are serving those positions rather than people 25 miles away downtown Tucson.
And we have the same interests.
And we have common interests, yeah.
And we're Vail. Come on. We have always been a unique town. We are the crown jewel of this area, and we need to protect that and honor that and support that and say, hey, you're my neighbor. We're something unique here, and that's what's so great about Vail. Okay, where are we going?
Robert Parrott, Delaware. So I thank the gentleman over there. It's most of my questions. But I've been here 20 years, and I've yet to feel how's my neighbor going to be different when we're a city? I have a real fear of extra government, no matter what the results are. Taxes go up. Taxes go up and up and up. What is the chance that if we become incorporated, we can dissolve corporation with enough people? Because, I mean, last vote, this got voted down by a lot. And I have yet to change my mind. I do appreciate the word, though, that went in. So is there a possibility to dissolve this if we, 10 years down the road, we're paying too many taxes? Thank you.
Yeah, you can always dissolve. The city of South Tucson has become a town and then dissolved, and then become a town and been dissolved. It just takes a vote of the people. If the government is not functioning and working well, then yeah, don't have a government. But if the government is working well, they receive the money that we're already paying in taxes, and they put it here locally in Vail to solve problems like, oh, Via Rancho del Lago and Colossal Cave Road backs up a lot. Why hasn't the county fixed that yet? When there was a plan to do that and money to do that, there just wasn't the will from Pima County to do it. The same thing with Colossal Cave and Camino Loma Alta. There is a huge pot of money that should come to us. It should come to us. It's our money. We paid for it. And it's going to Pima County, and they're spending it wherever they want to. And I don't want to disparage Pima County because they're doing as best as they can. But I don't know if they're always acting in our best interest here in Vail. And I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
Everybody, we hear this a lot about taxes. None of us want to increase taxes unnecessarily. If it's something that we think is valuable, like override elections for the school district, those tend to be voted in favor of. Last time they lost by 400 votes. So you say a big margin, it wasn't really that big a margin when you talk about 21,000 people. But the ultimate question about taxes in the state of Arizona is this town council can't implement taxes without the vote of the people in the town. So you say they're going to raise taxes. If they do, it's because the citizens of Vail have voted for it. And so you're protected that way. At least you're going to follow what other people in your community want, and the money will stay here instead of being somewhere else.
I got to leave, so you answered my question. I appreciate it. So me leaving is not a result.
I saw him raise his hand. I'll take that as a yes vote.
All right. We're over here. Yes, go ahead.
Assuming we incorporate, how will we attract new businesses and services
Great question.
to the Vail community? And do we have any idea where they will be located?
That is a great question. Am I doing good? Hold the mic up. All right. So one of the things that will actually be more of a benefit is, as an incorporated town, we now have the ability to go out and solicit other businesses to come into the town. When we look at the land that's right off of I-10, where the Vail School District offices are, that plot of land will be a great place for us to build commercial, residential, retail space. When you look at the land that's south of I-10, between Houghton Road, just south of I-10, that's a great place for us to build residential, retail, commercial spaces. So by us incorporating, one, we control the land. Two, we get to go out and solicit and have conversations, and we can actually make decisions, the new town council and their staff, about who do we want to bring into the area, what do we want to see, and we can make it happen.
Thank you. Could you please clarify what's happening now with the impact fees that are being paid and how that would be different with the incorporation?
So development impact fees are paid for when there's a new construction, $7,671 for impact fees. That goes into a pool that they call an impact fee area. It's a geographic map that the Pima County has put together. There used to be one in Corona, there used to be one in Vail, there used to be one in Rincon Valley. The Pima County decided to combine those, and now there's one impact fee area called Southeast Impact Fee Area. So if we build a house here, maybe across the street from Cienega High School, that could be spent in Corona. If we're incorporated, then we control those impact fee areas.
So, right here. I can't hear you.
And I'm wondering where this preliminary stuff that you're doing today. And I'm also curious about what kind of results you got from your surveys.
That's a good question for you.
Yes. So I think I heard you say, where did the monies come from for this and the results that we got from the surveys? So we did some fundraising in the early stages of this to raise dollars for us to be able to conduct the surveys. There were donors, they're all listed on our website. So if you want to go to our website, you can see where all of those funds came from. And for the survey, we did 2 surveys. One was an exit survey after we did the 6 neighborhood meetings. And we got about, I can tell you exactly, but it was probably 42% for incorporation, was 13%, 13 to 15% not for incorporation, and the rest was undecided. And we believe that most of the undecided was waiting for the feasibility study to see if it was financially feasible. The second survey that we did that you got in the mail with the little QR code, that survey, the results were very similar. But we are keeping that survey open because we want to get a larger demographic of people that are responding. So that survey will remain open until January. So from this day forward, we are transitioning to position ourselves to get on the ballot in August or in November. And we will have to raise additional funds in order to do that. So there will be a campaign phase. We have to have a process where we get signatures on petitions. So right now we will be coming to the community for those that are in support and want to see this go forward and asking for donations. Yes, sir.
My neighbor is very active. I live in a Italian village, and I wanted to correct what I heard some time ago. I thought I heard one of you say that that Rocky Cave has no authority over Madison Village property. That's incorrect. Rocky Cave sold that property to Madison Village, and it was subject to the CCNI conditions, covenants, and restrictions. Those are unchanged, and so I think you were mistaken.
Let me respond to that real quick. What we meant by that is that they don't have the ability to hold up Academy Village being within the town of Vail. The CCNRs would all still remain that you have. All that stuff still remains. But Rocking K as a development arm does not have the ability to keep Academy Village in or out.
They have whatever the CCNRs provide.
That's correct. Right.
The other thing is that our community, like I believe so many other communities, are all subject to CCNR. So that when we think about the zoning powers that would come upon incorporation, that would simply have to dovetail with or overlay the existing CCNRs, which are traditionally a little bit more strict.
I think that's
General zoning requirements. Finally, I'm assuming that incorporation would not change us all being subject to the existing county zoning ordinances. So that really what the incorporated entity would be able to do would be adopt more restrictive rather than less restrictive zoning rules. That's kind of an assumption I'm making.
So the second comment you made was about whether or not the CCNRs would remain when we become a town of Vail. The Vail would mostly have a lot of control over undeveloped or unplatted land. And there's a lot of that within the town boundary. If it's already been platted and zoned and constructed, that stays and remains. But anything outside of that, we would have control over. But whether or not we would put more restrictions in than the CCNRs, the CCNRs go with the property, they stay with the property. Those don't really change unless the people within that CCNR, that community, want to change the CCNRs. The town of Vail is more peripheral to an established neighborhood, other than we work with those residents to make sure that parks and recreation and roads and all the things that the town wants to build, that we determine as a town when and where those are placed.
Good evening, my name is Mason. I noticed, and I understand that the boundaries are still a work in progress, but I noticed my community, Rincon Knolls, just adjacent here to CNA High School, is not being included in Vail. We are a 5641 neighborhood. The back, it's a fairly new development. The back of the walls touch the border currently. Quite a shock to me. I'm sure anyone who's currently in Vail would make a strong argument to remain there. What are the chances that happens? 401 zip code being removed currently, and what can we do to make sure that's a topic that's addressed?
You know what property he's talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So let me restate that very simply, that if you're in a neighborhood that currently is in the city of Tucson, you feel like you're part of Vail, and you want to be part of Vail. The city of Tucson would have to go through a process of de-annexation, and then the town of Vail would have to enter into annexation. I can just tell you that that's unusual, not unprecedented, but it is unusual. And I'll give you an example where the city of Tucson recently de-annexed a piece of property, and that is for the bridge, the Valencia Road Bridge across the Pantano. They de-annexed that piece and allowed it to go into Pima County so that Pima County could help Diamond Ventures build that road. So it's not unprecedented, but it's hard to do.
Like, maybe I misunderstood, but we're in Vail, 85641, but the map shows we're not going.
Tucson.
85641 is a postal district. It has nothing to do with Incorporation. If you go out to Academy Village and over on the north side of Old Spanish Trail, they have a City of Tucson postal district today.
And Corona de Tucson as well.
Well, no, Corona de Tucson's 85641.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the post offices are completely different. They think differently than everybody else.
You are in the Vail School District. You're in Pima County. You're in the city of Tucson. And there's a potential that you could become part of the town of Vail.
It's a process.
But it's quite a big process. So we said we would end at 7:30. And so I think we'll take one more question. And then I've got a few closing
I
comments.
got two hands, so maybe two questions.
All right, go ahead.
I don't really have a question so much as when I look at some of the expenses estimates, it struck me that the transportation expense seemed a little light. As a traffic engineer, do you feel comfortable with that $13 million for transportation? But I think it's going to be a huge.
The 3.6 million for
So
transportation.
it's twice what we have.
It's twice what we get today.
What is it? I thought it was
3.6.
3.6, and that's twice what we get today. Last year, Pima County put 1.7 million.
Okay.
Can, as a parent, with a child in Vail, what I'm hearing is that people are wondering why they're not down. Tucson will eventually eat up this wonderful small town. Here's what happened. You have a vast array of age groups. Vail schools are the best in the state of Arizona, and there's a thing called busing. So when your schools become overcrowded, if you don't turn it into a city, then you can have potential students from other areas come in. Also, I have a question regarding the anonymous donor. When do we find out who the anonymous donor is for this form?
So the anonymous donor is the Chamber of Commerce, the Tucson Chamber of Commerce.
Greater Vail.
The the Greater Vail Chamber of Commerce. There was a donor that gave money to the Tucson Chamber. The Tucson
Vail
Chamber was unrestricted for them. They could have done anything with that, but they decided then to turn that money over to our Incorporation effort. And we are very much appreciative of the Chamber of Commerce for doing that.
Kind of my
So at this point, if a donor wishes to remain anonymous, we have to respect their wish to remain anonymous. Yes. As we proceed, as we go down this road and we start the campaign phase, we will form a PAC. At the point that we form a PAC, any donations that are made to the PAC will be public record.
Okay, so the donation of the anonymous donor, that money will be stated in the PAC when it becomes a PAC.
No, it will. The anonymous donor will remain anonymous. So the anonymous donor wishes to remain anonymous, and we will respect that wish for them to remain anonymous.
My concern is, where does the money come from? And if it's a developer, then you have other issues, because that's what's happening out there right now. So that's just my personal statement.
I understand.
That's fine, someone has a right to stay anonymous.
I understand.
But if it affects the future of a town, whichever you think is town or a city, what is their dog fight, so to speak?
Understand. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to say that none of us on the committee run the town of Vail. The people who run the town of Vail will be the people that the town of Vail elect. And every single election that will happen in town of Vail, you'll be understand whether or not there's money that's, and how that money is spent. The money that was given to the chamber was to allow us to talk to you, to find out what your hopes and your dreams are about the town of Vail, and it really has nothing to do with the future leadership, if you want to say, of Vail. It was basically funds that allowed us to do what we're doing now, which is find out about what your desires are and then get that information back into you. All right, I think, I started to see people leave, so, okay, one more.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is two-part, and it's to do with the election itself. You said that we go in August, we get 11 Month Street, and go in
November.
we have 7
7.
Month Street. I get the difference in months. My question is, who can vote, and is it more profitable for us to get more people voting in November, since that's when we get to know our own property here, down, more people available to vote than we would in August? What was the decision on that, or how do we make that decision?
Well, first of all, the statutes have 4 dates, 4 election dates, and if we're within those 4 election dates, then we don't have to pay for a special election. If we pick another date, then we'd have to pay for it. Of course, we aren't anybody. We're not a town council today. We can't vote for our own elections because we don't have any say-so in that. There's definitely an advantage to go earlier because we get those extra benefits from the great venture capital company of the state of Arizona. It gives us that free money for extra months. The danger of going in a November election, honestly, is it can get caught up in a lot of the national politics. It could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, but it's a risk. If it's August, we'd most likely be maybe the only item on the ballot, or there might be a school board or some other thing that goes on that, but it would be pretty much a special election without having to pay for a special election.
We draw the boundary that you've seen. We finalize that boundary. Anybody who's a voting member that lives inside that boundary that currently votes would be allowed to vote for the town of Vail. That's how that works.
So if you own property, but you are registered to vote in another state?
Then you cannot vote. That's correct. It's only registered voters within the boundary of Vail. And once we finalize the boundary, that boundary goes to Pima County. They do a geo-reference to find out who's a voter, and then they allow those people to vote. All right. I see a hand. Why do I see a hand?
Just a clarification on what is needed for the vote that pass or fail.
Just a 50% plus 1 vote to become a town of Vail. Hey, listen, we are going to be here, and we're more than willing to answer any of your questions till the last person leaves, but we need to make sure that we honor our commitment to let you leave. When you entered tonight, you were given a card, and we are asking you to fill out that card as you leave put that in the box or give it to one of the helpers, and your card will be drawn in a raffle prize. So, are we ready for the raffle drawing? Are we ready for the raffle drawing?
I don't think anybody wants to do the raffle.
It might be beneficial to say what the time frame is for setting the boundaries.
April 27th.
Okay, but I don't know if everyone
Yeah.
It'll be on the website.
And we'll continue to have we'll be pushing out.
It'll be in the newspaper and social media.
because it seems that the boundaries would have a
Thank you all for coming. Drive safely.
decreases.
Absolutely.